All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's presentation on the xLights Gem Series. Tonight we have Kyle Bostic of BF Light Shows. Kyle will be talking about how to make your show go viral and filming your show. And on we go to Kyle. There you go, Kyle.
All right, thanks, Daryl, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to do a short class on going viral and mastering the secrets to social media stardom. So, introduction, I'm going to go over some of your show design, how to go about filming, how to do editing, post-production, and then how to go about posting onto the different social media platforms. So I'll go over Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. A little bit about me. My name's Kyle Bostic. I've been in the industry for about 6 years now. I own BF Light Shows and RGB Sequences. Our social media platforms have about 1.2 million followers, and we get tens of millions of views annually. So we've put these suggestions into practice and have proven that they work. So we'll share everything we've learned kind of along the way and try to help you guys grow your following if that's what you're looking for. So, kind of one of the first elements is designing your show. You want to try to have unique elements, things that people won't see in everyone's show. You want to have something that kind of stands out and makes you unique. You want to make sure when it comes time to actually doing the recording of your show that everything's working properly. If you're having an issue and a controller's not working or you have a bunch of bad pixels, that's not the day to go record your show if you're trying to go viral. So, it may be the perfect day out. You have the right temperature and everything like that. Your display is looking great. You set time aside and you're like, all right, today's the day. You go outside, go to click record, and then you notice, a bunch of stuff isn't working. Your Mega Tree controller dies, or you have a bunch of pixels out, something along those lines. I would strongly encourage you to take the time to make those repairs and postpone recording. You want to record when your show is working at its peak. Um, and then you want to try to have things like straight lines. So if you outline your house and you're not using the permatrack and you're using, I don't know, Megatree strip or J channeling or something like that, you want to make sure that those lines are straight. You don't want them to kind of be sagging and all wavy. You want to try to make sure that everything looks nice and professional. And then also when you're going and creating your design, think about the angles that you're going to be filming from. So in my yard, I have a big maple tree on the right side. I have a telephone pole in like the front section on the other side of the sidewalk on my left side. So it kind of limits where I can set up a tripod and film from. So when I'm trying to design my home show, I try to make sure that the left side of my yard is fairly spaced out so I can go on an angle and I'm basically recording on an angle so I don't get the tree and I don't get the telephone pole. So that way I get a clear line of the house and then I get all the props. If everything was perfectly centered on the house, then things would be blocked by the tree and things would be blocked by that telephone pole. So each show is going to have its own unique challenges to try to be able to fit everything. Just try to make sure if you are layering props and you have, say, a pixel forest and then like some tombstones or candy canes and then, singing props behind that, see if you can create some elevation. Use longer EMT poles or whatever it is you're using to mount them. So that way, the first row that's closest to the street is your lowest level of props. And then behind that, it's stacked up a little bit higher. And it's kind of almost like stadium seating, how it's tiered and kind of goes upwards on an angle towards the back of your house or towards the front of your house. And then spacing kind of comes back to angles. You want to make sure props aren't just on top of each other. You want to try to make sure that if people are looking at your show, they're able to see what they're looking at and it's not just a blur of props everywhere. So some people are able to get good results with that. I found that most of the shows that do really well for going viral and things like that are more minimalistic shows. They have less props. There's a little less to look at, but you have more dynamic programming. So just something to kind of keep in mind as you are designing your shows. And then this is just a picture from Halloween from, I think this was 2 years ago, but just shows some high contrast colors. So we have purple for the spiders, and then the house is in green. And it just creates a kind of a vibrant picture that people are going to want to take a look at. If you do a post on social media, people are going to click on it and try to see what's going on, check for addresses and hours and things like that. And then another thing that you should do is try to find fun angles and create little messages. So you see on here, we just put some text on our matrix, says Happy Halloween, and then we just have a very close zoomed in shot of the singing characters. And we can now post that to our social media page as a Happy Halloween post. So little things like this. You don't have to have your whole display in if it's hard to get your whole display in one shot. Feel free to crop things, get close, zoom in, and just highlight real specific areas. Kind of same thing with this one. So we created some submodels for the Boscoyo tombstones. I think we also did it with the Gilbert Engineering and EFL ones too. But we basically took the R and the P, turned them into little eyes so they kind of look like little Pac-Man ghosts, and just created kind of that little face in the tombstone, and then got real close and just did a shot down that row. So just having creative angles between like these two help create engagement when you go to post them online. And then again, high contrast colors. So in this one, we have a real bright purple, we have a green, and then we have white for the moving heads and on the spooky tree and that kind of thing. In this one, if we're nitpicking, the matrix brightness is a little too high. It's hard to read that it says it's showtime. So if you're going to nitpick things, that's something that I would try to adjust. In this picture, my brightness for the matrix was actually set at 10%, but it being a 1-inch pixel spacing matrix at 4,400 pixels or whatever that works out to be in, it's super bright even only at 10%. What you can do to kind of avoid that or to combat that is in xLights, when you're going into your sequences, you can actually adjust the brightness of individual effects. So if you're going to film and you notice that it's, blowing everything out like this, if you have a text effect, you could go in and actually just dial down the brightness of that text effect. You could also change the color of it. So instead of it being white, it'd be a darker color, could be a purple or a green or something that's not quite as bright. Keep in mind, if you are trying to go viral and you succeed, then you are going to drive a lot of increased traffic to your area. So over the last few years, we've been on local news and national news, and we ended up having, I would say, thousands of people show up at our house every single night. It got to the point where there were no parking spots on either side of the street. There was a traffic jam basically down our street the entire time our show was running. So instead of being able to go out and do fun activities and trunk or treats and things like that with the kids, I had to stay home and basically be on traffic duty. I had to manage traffic flow to make sure that it was safe if in an emergency, an emergency vehicle could get through, things like that. Most of the time, people were pretty responsive and respectful, but there were a handful of times where people would try to pull in neighbors' driveways and they would just get out and park like they're allowed to park there. So keep in mind, you'll end up attracting a lot of people. Most of them will be respectful, but more people, more problems, and can cause a headache. So be careful what you wish for with that. And then when you're trying to set up your show, post sneak peeks along the way. So one of the nights in between Christmas and Halloween, um, it was really nice out. It was unseasonably warm, so I decided I was going to work even though it got dark. Needed some additional light, so instead of using just a little headlight, I turned on the moving heads, aimed them at the grass, and it lit up my entire yard, gave me a good working area. And as I was walking back and forth, grabbing different props and getting things set up, I noticed that that would probably be a cool picture. So I took a picture. You can see there's still a skeleton in the yard or in the tree. He was hasn't been taken down yet from the Halloween show, and he's kind of watching Christmas get set up. So we posted that online and said, we're dying to see you for Christmas, or, we put some funny joke spin on it, and our audience absolutely loved it. They were all excited, can't wait, when's it start? Asked a bunch of questions, and we had lots of comments commenting on the photo that that was a good idea to use the lights, and they're excited to see what's coming. So those types of things can really help grow your audience and get people engaged. And then once your show's all set up and ready to go, I like to make sure everything's tested. That way, when we're ready to have people there, we don't experience any bugs, any issues with the sequence didn't render correctly or anything like that. And while you're out there watching it, you can go ahead and snap some photos and start posting those photos as little teasers so people can kind of get an idea of what's coming for that season. And then I'm not sure, actually, I'm gonna have to stop my share again with audio and video. Okay. Let me know if this is too loud for you guys.
That's fine.
Okay. So I'm not going to go through the entire video, but you kind of see in this video, I have multiple different angles and the angle of the video changes. That is going to help keep interest and prevent people from getting bored too quickly and then just scrolling. So if you set up something unique, in this case, I had the singing band from Lowe's and Costco that we hacked to work with xLights, and we kind of highlighted it in this video. So that helped gain additional views and things like that. So we had kind of a close-up view, and then we zoom out, you can see the whole display. And as you go through that video in different parts, it focuses on the singing characters or the band or the roof or the moving heads, whole show, and just kind of bounces back and forth. So those are additional things that you can do, oops, to help gain those additional views. And then one thing that is super important, especially for platforms like TikTok, is what they call a hook, something that's going to pique your interest early. And things that are really good at that are things that are going to be unexpected. So in this one, you'll notice that the moving heads kind of kick on in one color, and then a different set of moving heads do something totally different.
We're gonna have the best looking house in town, Russ.
I think you might be overdoing it, Dad.
So being able to have that dynamic contrast where it goes totally black, lights up a little, and then something else happens, that will drive your engagement much higher than if you just had all the lights on all the time. I think that video ended up getting something like 15 million views. It was a ton of views. It was crazy. And then that's going to bring us over to filming. There are a lot of different recording devices. The better the device, the better the results. So you can use digital cameras, smartphones, drones, GoPros. There's a lot of different options out there nowadays. I typically use an iPhone for all of my videos. Every once in a while, it'll be a drone, but for the most part, almost everything is shot with an iPhone for me. I use the Filmic Pro app. It's a paid app. The default camera app with an iPhone doesn't allow you to lock in many of the settings, with the Filmac Pro, you can pick your resolution, you can pick your frame rate, you can manually set the ISO, you can set exposure, you can lock the white balance, you can dial in the focus and the zoom. And then one thing to be aware of if you're shooting on an iPhone specifically, or any phone that uses a mirror style lens, is something called lens flare. So in this photo, I have an example of what lens flare is. In this photo, you can see the singing bulbs, the outline and the white of their eyes and mouth are super bright and it's blowing out the camera. And you actually see that reflection inverted over here where this arrow is. And what's causing that is the way camera phones and mirrored cameras work is it's going to take that image, it's going to take it through its sensor, and then it hits a mirror, which helps enlarge it and get it the resolution that it's supposed to get in such a small, compact area. That's why if you see real high-end cameras offer mirrorless and they cost a lot more, that's why, because they won't have this unintended effect. It's one way to kind of avoid running into these types of issues. Another is if you drop your exposure down, you can play with the exposure in order to make the screen a little bit darker. You can also drop the brightness in either xLights or in all of your controllers. In this video, or in this shot, I purposefully made it more dramatic so it shows up a little bit better so I could kind of demonstrate it. But if you watch any videos, especially if people use like fire, I have a few videos where we used fire. The flame is so bright that it will always blow out that camera. If you watch the videos from one of like Tom shows, for example, he uses a mirrorless camera. He doesn't have that effect. So the better the the better the camera, the better the results when you're actually going to film. And then this is the Filmec Pro apps interface. So in the upper left-hand corner, you have an option to set the ISO. Over to the right, you have the shutter speed. I try to make the shutter speed match my frame rate for whatever sequence I'm doing. Most of the time, most of our sequences are at 66 frames, and then I will have the shutter speed of around 60. This one, it was just me kind of setting up the camera and I took a screenshot so you could see the interface, but I didn't actually lock any of these settings yet. The only one that's locked is the white balance. So
It,
as you start to
Kyle, is
go,
this a phone app or what is
it
this
is,
app?
yep, it's
Okay.
a phone app. So it's available for iPhone and Android. It is paid. I think it's like $15 a year, I think. $15 I think it's $15 a year. Um, it's not super expensive, but it's also not free. Um, and then over in the bottom left corner, you can either manually set your white balance or you can lock it. This icon right here allows you to pick the individual camera that your iPhone is shooting. So my iPhone, I think it's the 13 Pro Max, has 3 cameras on the back of it. That lets you pick which camera lens you're actually shooting from. This little Wi-Fi symbol allows you to set up and sync multiple devices together. So if you have multiple iPhones all running this app, you could use something called the Filmec remote, and you could use something like an iPad to control all the cameras at the same time. And then over here, it shows that it is being filmed at 60 frames a second, and it was being set in 4K. And then up here, you have your different bit depths in order to record. So you have a few different options for that. And then you have this yellow circle and this yellow square. Those are the zoom and the focus. So you can set those in 2 different areas if you want one area to be specifically focused, but zoom in on another area, you can do that. You could lock them both and have them kind of equally spaced like this. You could drag them on top of each other, really up to you, and kind of depends on what you're trying to get in your shot. And then under the settings over here, there's another option that allows you to show the exposure levels. And the exposure will basically show up like a zebra skin, and it will show you whether you're underexposed or overexposed. So you can really kind of dial that in, and you won't have that blowout, grainy footage that you see on a lot of people's phone videos. So that's why I like that app. I'm sure there's other options out there. I just really don't like the one that's built into iPhones for filming a show, but this one I've been using for years and it works great. And then audio, always recommend trying to record your show with audio present. You're going to replace the audio in post-production. So it doesn't really matter if you hear crickets, if you hear a siren go by, or you hear cars driving by, horn honks. None of that really matters. You just want to make sure that you can at least hear the audio a little bit. That way you're able to sync it up later. Um, if you are trying to film and you're using like a Bluetooth speaker, there's going to be a delay. We all know that. If you try to film with the delay when you try to go edit and post, you're going to have a hard time trying to eliminate that delay. So I would recommend aux, but FM also works as long as it's not, one of the cars that have that several second delay for audio processing. So,
And a new twist there for last year was people were using pulse mesh and recording right off your phone into the video. Which
okay,
apparently it
nice.
works.
All right. I'll have to, I saw a little bit about that, but I didn't get to play with it. So I'll have to check that out. Um, if you can and you have multiple unique elements, I would encourage you to try to film with multiple angles if possible. So, like I mentioned, I had that band a couple years ago. I had one camera set up real close to that, and then I had another one out at the street so you could see everything. And if you're trying to get multiple angles, you could accomplish this a couple different ways. You could either record multiple times from the same device. So maybe you only have one phone. I assume most of us don't have multiple phones, but what you could do is set the phone up in the first desired filming location. Go ahead and film the entire show or the entire segment you're trying to film. Once you're done, move that phone or that device into a new location and repeat the process and film the whole thing again. Once you've recorded it in multiple spots, looks like Doug raised his hand. Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, sorry. Hey, thank you, Kyle. Do you use a tripod for your
I do, yes.
phone?
So,
That's okay. Thank you.
yep. So all of the different angles that we film on are set up with usually an iPhone and some type of tripod. So um, I do have a couple of phones. I sometimes steal my wife's phone, so usually I end up having a few different angles, and I try to record once with multiple devices as opposed to recording multiple times with a single device. But that's just my personal preference and mostly for the sake of time, because if I run, a half hour, 45-minute long show and I want to film that and I try to record it 4 or 5 angles, it's going to take me 4 or 5 hours to try to get all those angles recorded if I move one phone at a time. So I try to do it a few devices at a time. Um, and then once everything is recorded, then you can combine them in post-production or your video editor. And then as your video is going along, you'll sync up your audio and then you can change those angles however you see fit. So we'll dive a little more into that in just a minute. So in editing or post-production is where you can do any of your color correction. You can do any of your editing with your clip. So if you need to zoom in, if you want to add something like a Ken burn effect, I'll dive in with Final Cut in just a moment and I'll leave the PowerPoint, but this just kind of gives you a rough overview. This top line here is my primary video. This program is Final Cut. It is for Apple only, and it is a paid program. I don't remember exactly how much it was. It was like $300 or $400. So this one was kind of expensive. I've heard a lot of people use DaVinci Resolve. They have free and paid versions that work pretty well. And you could also use something like Premiere Pro or After Effects or anything like that as well. So you have your top row here. This is what is going to be displayed. And then below that, I have the audio. This is the actual MP3. And I've removed the audio from the video track. So there is no more audio in the video track. And then this second line down here is another video source. And you'll notice in here, there's a couple little black spots in this clip. And then this part is black and this part's this blue color. What's happening here is I am allowing this video clip to play, and then I'm cutting it, and then I'm basically lining up all those cut marks with this lower level as well. And the video is going to be this timeline. And then when this goes black, it jumps down to here. Then it jumps back up, back down, back up, back down. And that is showing me that it is going back and forth between different camera angles. So I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in just a second. And then you have the option of editing your exposures. So you can see over here, there's a global setting, which will control everything. You can adjust your shadows, which are like your blacks. You have midtones and then your highlights. So you can see I've came in here and I kind of played with that to get the desired look that I was going for. So let me switch out of this. And this clip, I don't have multiple angles for, but we'll kind of give you a rough idea. So right here, you can see the original audio. Pull that down real quick and I'll mute that so it doesn't keep doing that. But you have the audio wave right here. And you'll notice that where these little spikes are, there's also a spike in the MP3 down here. You want to make sure that those are lined up. Even if you're a few frames off, that can make a big difference, especially with like the singing faces. And if you have any elements that are really precise timing, if you are off by a handful of frames, it will throw off your entire video. So the way I typically do this is I will drag in either the audio or the video first. In this case, I did the audio. And you can tell what kind of the anchor point is. Everything is being aligned by this dark gray timeline here, which is the one in the middle. And then I aligned the video to go along with that. So you can see here's the beginning of my MP3. And as you can see in the video here, I have some lights there. So the sequence actually started just a split second or so before the MP3 actually started. And you can see it comes on frame by frame at 60 frames a second. And you can see, as this shockwave pulls up, how that actually goes over the whole display. When you're working at a high frame rate and you're editing things, one frame at a time like this, you can really notice additional details that you may not notice when you're just watching the xLights rendering or the preview. So as you're watching this, you may find a handful of issues that you're like, I never noticed that. And then you have the option to go back and adjust or tweak them. And then what I end up doing from here is I'll drag the original audio either all the way down, or you can right click and detach the audio. And then you could just delete it or mute it, whatever you prefer. I'm going to keep that muted so it doesn't keep interfering with the audio there. And then if you have kind of a spot you want to highlight, so you see like this kind of shock wave and the moving heads kind of kick out, which looks kind of cool. We could come in here. The house kind of gets dark right about here. We can go ahead and for this program, it's Control B, which is the blade, and it basically just cuts the video. We can go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. And we'll say that that's part of the end. So now we've kind of cut this little section of video and we could do something different with this. If we come over, we could transform it and we could just kind of zoom in. If we wanted to do something like a Ken burn effect, and what that is it is going to basically allow you to zoom in and add some movement to your video. You could either make it the same size and just kind of go left to right. You could zoom in and then zoom out. Really quite a few different options here. So I'll show you kind of what this looks like, and I'll make this a little bit bigger. So we have our show, and now it kind of zooms in on that part, and then it bounces back. It's a little abrupt that it kind of bounces back like that. So something else you could do is if you take this, cut it in half, click on this one, and then you reverse the Ken burns, it's going to zoom in and it'll stop and then it'll zoom back out. So you can get a little better movement if you are doing things like that. If your show goes completely black and you don't have any pixels on, that is a great time to do a camera angle change. That way, the show goes black, you can't see anything. All of a sudden, you're in a different spot on your show with the different camera angle, and that really helps keep people engaged. When you have everything kind of in one spot the entire time, typically most audiences won't stay as engaged as if you have some movement. With that being said, it does take a lot longer to add those movements into your video editing. It can take several hours or days to go through and edit and make all those adjustments. So depending on how busy I am, sometimes I will leave it and I won't do any Ken burns. Sometimes I'll film with several angles and I'll change several different shots. And then one other thing I wanted to kind of dive in or at least touch on is color correction. So if you come in here, you can come over to the color option and you could adjust colors if needed. So if something's looking a little too green and you wanted to go a little more red or more yellow, more blue, you have the option to kind of change that. Typically, I won't play with color correction too much. Usually I'll make those adjustments inside xLights, but it's nice to have that option if you need it. And then saturation, I do usually play with at least a little bit. And what this can let you do is in real life, when you drop the exposure down, you lose some of that vibrancy that you get of lights. Being able to adjust the saturation and kind of overcompensating for that will help repair what you lose when you drop the exposure. So you can see right now it's a little dim. It's not super vibrant, but if you kind of drag these sliders up, you can play with them until it gives you a little nicer of a glow, which is what the naked eye is actually seeing a little bit better than what you see on camera. So right there, you get a little nicer glow. And if you revert back, it just looks a little flat. Any questions before I try to jump into the social media side of this?
You got a couple of questions if you got time.
Sure.
On the frame rate, I've noticed on your sequences you use 66 frames rather
Yes.
than is that because of that you're recording at 60 frames that you don't have jitter or strobing or anything like that, the interference you
Yes.
get? Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So typically the higher the frame rate, the better. It does end up coming with a kind of a cost. As you increase the frame rate, you increase your render times, your FSEQ file becomes bigger, you can have less pixels per port for your controllers, things like that. So I typically try to stay at 66. Some people I know, like Tom does 100. Some other people use varying frame rates, but the standard's 20 and 40. But 60 kind of seems to be a good medium that gives you a little more accuracy than 40, especially for like the singing faces, but doesn't have that much of an added cost as far as pixels per port and um, FSEQ size and things like that.
if you say run 40 frames per second in your show,
Mhm.
does it tend to interfere or give you some strobing when you record then?
It I haven't noticed any strobing from recording at 40 frames. I've never ran anything below 40 frames, but being at 40 frames, I haven't noticed any issue. I just noticed that the singing faces in particular aren't as crisp or precise. So that's why I started going above that. So I can get the singing faces to be a little more accurate.
Do you do any drone work?
I do, yeah. So I haven't done it. I didn't do it in this video. I did quite a bit for our drive-through we did last year. Is there a specific question on that?
I just wondered, you hadn't mentioned or said anything about filming with a drone.
Yeah, so I have done drones. Let's
What
see.
drone?
For the drive-through, I used the Nevada 2 from DJI. The reason we got that one specifically was because it's like a FPV drone, so you're able to kind of see what the drone sees. Let's see. Yeah, so this one, let's see.
Did you fly it down that tunnel?
I don't think I did in that one. I do have, let me see.
First off, it'd probably be a challenge. Second off, it would be cool to have a video going down your tunnel.
Yeah,
He does have a
I
video that he
definitely have
did do a
videos of it.
tunnel. Yeah, because he did a flip in the middle of the tunnel.
Yeah, I I'll find it. I'll try to find it before the end of this class, but um, I have flown it. I do have videos of it. I'll see if I can find it before we're out of this class. Um, any
Have
other
you
que
have you used security cameras to film with?
I have tried. So I have security cameras set up. There's actually one kind of right where my, field of view would be right here on that telephone pole aimed at my show. It does not work well enough in order to be able to post to something like social media. It does give me a good view of my show if I need to see what's going on. I can make sure the show's running, the lights are all working and that kind of thing. But if you're trying to get like a quality recording out of it, that's not the way to do it. At least not the ones I've used. I've used a
Do
handful of different Rio links and none of them were good enough.
you think that's just a function of the quality of the camera, or is it just that they don't have the adjustments for the shutter speeds and things like that, like the
I
um,
would I would guess it's
iPhones?
both. I would think it's a combination of both. They're not really designed for that. It's very difficult to film in a low light environment while filming bright lights. So that's extraordinarily hard for a device to do. So your cheaper cameras, your cheaper cell phones and things aren't able to do it, and security cameras definitely aren't designed to do stuff like that.
I got a question. I just want to confirm something.
Sure.
When you were saying in matching the frames in xLights, I heard 60 and 66 frames. Is it 60
So
or is it 66 that you put into xLights?
I put 66 in xLights. The way it breaks down to milliseconds, you can't do 60. I forget what the other option is. It gets close to 60 and then 66, but it doesn't actually do 60.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know because I
Yep.
had heard both coming out of that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the phone doesn't give you the option to set 66 frames, so it's kind of default at 60, and then xLights doesn't do 60, so xLights I put a little bit over.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint. We'll do a little bit of social media, leave a few minutes for questions, and I'll try to find that drone footage. All right, so social media, I'll touch on this for a few minutes. So we have TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Reddit. I'd say the most relevant for our hobby and our group here is TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and maybe Instagram. TikTok is very, very heavy on trends. You want to focus on portrait mode. TikTok constantly sends things out, alerts or, promo stuff that says, hey, film in landscape mode and we'll try to help your video. They're trying to go after that market, but they are not there yet. Your landscape videos will not do as well as portrait mode videos on TikTok. TikTok, everyone on there has a very, very short attention span. So you need a very strong hook, like I showed with that greatest show intro where you had the green moving heads and then the white moving heads at a different angle. You want to have short videos. TikTok likes to, again, they like to say, oh, we want you to use over a minute long videos and things like that. Those videos hardly ever go viral. The shorter the videos, the better. Most of my videos that have millions or tens of millions of views are between 10 to 20 seconds or so. And then also with that, TikTok seems to prefer videos that are more zoomed in. So instead of being able to see your entire display, only being able to see a little portion of it at a time, and then either changing the angle or zooming. You could use a Ken Burns effect to accomplish that. And then this is starting to change, but hashtags used to be super important. Seems like those are kind of dying off, and TikTok's algorithm is starting to place your content in front of the audience without the hashtags. And then,
Kyle, is it just to get popular, or do you make money on that?
so I have monetized TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We do get paid for all four of them. Um, it is not very much money though. So I going off the top of my head, we had that murder scene video from that Chop Chop Slide ICP video from like 4 years ago. That got 95 million views, I think. Um, that ended up paying me like 3,500 bucks. So, I mean, it was a good little chunk of money, but if it was a non-music video where I have to share the rights with a recording artist, 95 million views probably would have paid me $35,000. So that is a significant difference in price, and that has to do with the music labels taking a majority, if not all of the funds. TikTok pays the least out of any of them, but they're the most liberal with music rights. So generally speaking, you still get a little bit of money, even if you're using musical videos on TikTok once you've monetized it. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube basically collect all those royalties and send it to the artist. So per view, TikTok pays the least, but when music's involved, you get a small cut of that, where the other ones you don't. Um, YouTube. So YouTube is more key with popular songs, definitely in landscape mode unless you're doing YouTube Shorts. Also need strong hooks. YouTube is definitely better for longer videos. They like to have lots of motion and angle changes. You need to have a higher quality video and more production behind it for it to do well on YouTube. So TikTok, you're able to kind of go out, film something. I've had videos where I just hold my phone, it's not on a tripod. You hear crickets in the background, and I've posted that video and still got millions of views on TikTok. I stopped doing that, so I don't do that anymore, but it was possible when I, first started doing this. YouTube, never the case. Your videos that are jittery and don't have a high quality or high production value behind it won't do very well at all. So, got to put more effort into your YouTube videos. If you can combine multiple songs into one longer video, so you have like your full Christmas show, your full Halloween show, those videos are substantially longer than a single song. Those will probably do a lot better than your single song videos. And then in the bottom corner there, you see this was, I would say, like December's timeline, but had 750,000 views, had an additional 2,000 people subscribe to the channel, and it paid us a little under $300. So again, made a little bit of money, not a whole lot because most of that ends up going to the artist. But I wanted to at least include that because people are like, well, once you monetize it, I can make a bunch of money. If you get a bunch of views for channels that don't have, or I'm sorry, if you get a bunch of views on videos that don't have music rights behind it, that would probably be in the, 7,000 range. So you get a lot more, I'm sorry, yeah, 7,000 range for 744,000. Um, so you get a lot more money if you don't have the music licensing you have to deal with. And then Facebook, they like when you create reels, use medium length videos. You can do portrait or landscape. I found that doing portrait mode works a little bit better. Um, and then you can add stickers and things like that, little GIFs and things where you have things to kind of highlight your video. Kind of the same thing. So this is the last 28 days. This was, in April. You can see our performances, 23,000 views or something in mid-April. But during, peak season over like in this one's Instagram, but accounts reached from October to November, 8.1 million, reached from March to April, 14,000. So a very drastic difference in accounts reached when it's actually show season and when your videos are doing well. So I wanted to kind of include these two different ones. Facebook owns Instagram, so these platforms are virtually identical. You can create reels, again, medium length videos. Portrait mode does a little bit better, and then you can add stickers. But this kind of gives you a better idea of where those trends are, what accounts look like in busy season, and what you could potentially make with these accounts. You won't make a whole lot of money. It's going to be very minimal, but it can drive a lot of increased followers to show up at your house, to be able to visit your show, get the word out, and kind of get you some publicity, possibly get you on the news and things like that. So I got a few minutes for questions, and then in the meantime, I'll stop sharing. I'll see if I can find that drone show video.
Is the income from the your Facebook, your TikTok, all these media things, does that justify the work that goes into it, or is it more of an advertising thing to drive your consulting side of things?
For me personally, it's more for my sequence side of things. It started off just I wanted to do it and I wanted to be able to film it and post it and things like that. Um, I'd see other people's videos, Matt Johnson and Tom and all those people, and you're like, that looks awesome. I want to do that. So I kind of followed foot in that, and then from there it was never to get money, but once I started a sequence store, then it kind of became a advertising tool, and we've got some nice commercial deals out of it and things where they have came across our videos and have been like, I want you to do this for me, what does that take and that kind of thing. So that's been a nice addition, so that's why we keep doing it.
Kyle, what have you found lately with like YouTube taking down videos because of certain music that's been included in it?
So I haven't had any issues with them taking the video down. I have had issues where they were blocked. Typically, that for me, that happens if I have multiple songs in the same video. And I don't know whether this is allowed or not, but the way I've got around it is I have always fought or, submitted a dispute under fair rights. That doesn't give me the rights to own the music, but that has so far always got my video unblocked and allowed to be viewed. Occasionally, it'll still be blocked in Belarus or Russia, but I don't really care about those as long as it's available in the United States and around us.
So that what you're saying is like if you were doing like a mashup of in a sequence, those would be typically more caught by YouTube's content
Yes.
ID system. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And From what I've heard, the reason those are blocked is because YouTube uses its algorithm to automatically identify the songs, the license holder, and all of that, and it will try to pay whatever the license holder is. If there are multiple license holders that are under different companies or different umbrellas, it's hard for YouTube to split up, well, did this person watch this portion of it or was it this portion? So instead of them trying to figure that out, they just block the video and say, we're not dealing with it. But if you fight it, so far, 100% of the time, I've been successful at fighting it.
Do
Yeah,
you
I
ever
think a
put
lot
up?
more of that also has to do with the Copyright Act and in
Yeah.
relation to those mashups there with what's happened in the past, more than I think their content ID system is not. I think it's more technological to be able to match the fingerprint of the audio that's there than that. I think it's more Copyright Act related. So, but thank you.
Yep.
Do you ever do a lead in that's different to the music that's in the video? In other words, a lead in that would, if it first off did 10, 15 seconds and it decided that it wasn't a copyrighted music, it would skip it.
Okay, one second.
They'll find it wherever it is in the video, Tom.
Yeah. So in the actual, let me see if I can find it.
Because I used to do a little bit of different audio going into my videos. I've never had one dropped at or taken down.
We'll get even the gem sessions blocked because of music that was the presenter used in it, various spots in the video.
All right. So here is my YouTube dashboard. So you can see under here, Halloween show part two. It's 14 minutes long. I have several different songs in it. It's public, but it's ineligible to be monetized. And that is because the copyright holder or the copyright people, music labels own the rights to it. So in here, can't be monetized, and then it finds the different songs. And it will come in here, and right here, from 11 minutes and 45 seconds to 14 minutes and 44 seconds, it has Bye 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 from NSYNC. So it knows, even though this is a 14-minute video, this portion of that video has that song in it. And then it's owned by SME. And it'll do that for every song in your video. And then this one, we filmed the Frozen drone show for the Wisconsin Mini. Let's see. And it says ineligible, don't have an option to change that. And then partially blocked. Video cannot be seen in some territories. Video cannot be monetized, ad revenues paid to the claimant, and it goes directly to the actual artist. And if you want to look in here, it'll tell you where they're visible and where they're not. So blocked territory, Russia. So this video is not available in Russia.
So if you're just doing the really short TikTok ones, do
Yep.
you have to worry about the monetization as well because they're really super short, or is there like a time limit on it, or what?
So in here, I have this Beetlejuice mashup somewhere in here. So I have Dracula down here. It actually let me do monetization with this Dracula song, even though it's Dracula. 23 seconds, and it got 1.3 million views. So I did get paid for this video. I don't know exactly how much that one paid me, but it did actually pay me for this one.
Well,
Kyle,
I'm responsible for 1 million of your views on your ICP mashup.
Well, thank you.
Kyle, on that one Halloween, I think it was a Halloween show that you said it was like 15 minutes long.
Yep.
That had those that mashup. Was that one that got blocked initially, and then you had to dispute it, or do you remember?
I don't remember. One that I know with 100% certainty that was blocked was this Christmas show from 2023. This one. I don't know if it'll show me, but so it says dispute rejected. So it did actually go through the dispute process. It denied it, but it unblocked my video. So in here it says dispute rejected, but
Uh,
this video was 100% blocked. Nobody could see it. It
yeah,
ended up, being viewable. I just didn't get any money for it. I wasn't
right,
trying to get the money, so I didn't care. I just wanted
right.
it. And then um, so and then it ended up
Got
getting
it.
154,000 views after it was unblocked. So still did all right even after its initial blocking.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Are you getting close to finding it, Kyle, or do we want to wrap it up and then you can just show it after we stop recording?
I think I got it. Give me just
All right. Steve's got a question.
go ahead, Steve.
Oh, he says no mic. It's in chat.
Oh,
Um, you got chat handy?
yeah.
Have you considered
Sen-
using AI-based lyric songs for original content so that you can get around the limitation?
I have not tried that or really put too much effort into that. I have heard a handful of AI generated songs, and some of them are pretty well done and may be popular with the sequence community, but I haven't actually put too much effort into that yet, but maybe I'll look into that a little more.
Well, while you're looking, Kyle, can
Okay.
you speak a little bit about your show? You've got a bunch of moving heads. What brands, sort of thing? What are you
Sure.
using for your projection mapping?
Yep.
Various. Just walk through your display.
All right. So hide that one. For my moving heads, I have the indoor ones from your Pixel store on the top of my house. So the ones up on the roof are from your Pixel store. They're indoor. They're 230 watts with the domes. And then the ones on the porch right here are the Phoenix Ray Max from Meadows Designs. They are the 380 watt ones, I believe. All of them are bulb based. I have tried some of the LED ones, and they do not create nearly as vibrant of a beam as the outdoor ones, or I'm sorry, the lamp-based ones. For the projection mapping stuff that I do all of the mapping myself. I don't use any software to auto create that. Basically, I set up a projector. It's hard to see, but it's basically this little box right here, and it's about 10 feet away from this peak. And I trace out the triangle of this peak right here, and then I create a mask in After Effects with that triangle shape. And then I can go ahead and I can throw in a video on there. In this case, so turn down the audio here. So right here, I basically just took the matrix in xLights. So I had all these effects created in xLights. I right-clicked on the matrix model, rendered an export. That turned it into an MP4. I threw that into After Effects. I used that mask to black everything out so it doesn't show up on the roof up here, and it only fits in this little area. Rendered that, sent that to FPP, changed the file name to be the same as my audio file. So that way FPP sends the signal when my show starts to keep the projector in sync. I noticed there was probably about a quarter second delay or so. I think it was like 20 something frames. So I actually went through and I adjusted all those videos it was 20 something frames, and I can see that if I go back just a little bit. Like right here, it's still off by like 3 frames. So 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. So it's like 24 frames or something like that.
And you
What is
mentioned
that
something
white
about
stuff on you?
you mentioned something about the band you had. What was that again? Your three member
Yep.
band.
So I got that. The guitarist and the drummer came from Lowe's. They were just it was basically a little servo that was in there, or I'm sorry, it was a little motor, like a DC motor, and then I added a servo to the guitarist's hands, and then those motors used 5 volts. So I hooked those up to a Matos Designs Pixel to DC board, and then I used xLights to program them. So I was able to control what those motors did. And then I added a couple servos and used the Pixel to servos board from Experience Lights to control those.
What's that white stuff on your roof?
It is something called beef netting. We now carry it in the store, but you basically stretch it out and you cut holes in it, and it looks like spider webs.
That looks pretty cool.
So if you do a Halloween show, that stuff's super awesome to work with. It's like a polyester cotton blend, super stretchy, and it comes in a roll. You basically just unstretch it. The way we did it, I set that whole thing up kind of in my backyard. I measured the width and length of my roof, tied it to a fence, pulled it out, used some lawn chairs and things like that to make it taut, cut all the holes. Then it was the right size for the roof, carried it up to the roof and stretched it back out and made a giant spider web.
It's reusable then, correct?
It is, yeah. So I've been using the same one for several years now. So I bought it once and it's been holding up ever since. And then this is that drone video one of the drone videos I was talking about.
Do you wanna go where it's covered in all colored lights, where the runaways are running the night? Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you.
Have you ever run into one of those trees?
Sure have.
You got really close.
I did get really close. There were a couple instances where I did run into stuff, but um, the way the Avata is set up, it has prop guards on it. So if you do run into something, it's still pretty flexible and isn't too much of a big deal if you run into something as long as you're not going full speed.
And the zooms on those drones are awesome too. So you could be zoomed in on something and get really close on it, and you're still pretty far away from it too.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun to fly. It's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive. I want to say that one was like $900. So I mean, it's not super cheap, but I've seen drones in the $4,000 or $5,000 range, so it's not one of those either.
You must have gotten it on a discount. Mine was like 1,300, I think.
I bought it like when it first came out.
Any last questions for Kyle? We're gonna wrap this up. We get just over an hour here. All right, thanks, Kyle. That was fabulous. I'm just gonna stop the recording. If you guys want to ask more questions, go for it.